Hi, everyone. Welcome to our conversation about all things energy, where we will be talking about all things spiritual, metaphysical, and cosmic. We've gotten together to create this video series to talk about all the topics that are at the top of everyone's mind in the spiritual community. In this video and future videos, we are going to be talking about everything from astrology to ascension to psychic development to channeling and more. So we hope you'll check out all of our videos, and more will be coming soon. And also make sure you check out our previous videos where we've covered how to ground your energy and why that's important, and how we read energy, and also some videos about how all of us got started on our spiritual journey. And our goal is just to help you on your spiritual path. So before we get started, why don't we take a quick moment and introduce ourselves? Yaila, would you like to get started?
Sure. Hello, my name is Yaila, and I am an intuitive teacher and healer, as well as a theta healing practitioner. And I like to really support people in expanding their own psychic development and learning tools. And so I help you strengthen your intuition.
Great. Corey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Corey, and I am a clairvoyant and a clairvoyant teacher. And I love to help people heal their traumas and just heal themselves, and ultimately help them learn to fall in love with themselves.
Oh, that's great. And I am Peyton. I am an intuitive and a channel. I'm also a certified energy healer and Akashic Records reader. And I help lightworkers and sensitives connect with their intuition, their guides, and their higher self so they can live happier, healthier lives. So tonight, our topic is we are going to be exploring how do you tell, as you start to open your intuitive abilities, the difference between being in your mind and being in your imagination. So Yaila, what would you say the difference is between the two?
Well, when I was first starting to understand how I read energy, we kind of talked about that in a previous video, but it took me a minute because I'm claircognizant. So I'd get like a flash of something, and then I would just have this knowingness coming into my mind. And how I started to learn how to discern between the two versus, my mind versus actually what's coming to me in my clear senses. It's energy is really, really subtle. I noticed I was kind of expecting the energy to be like this big thing, and I knew it was gonna be like this obvious, like it's like a lightning bolt out of the sky, and it's really not that intense. It's actually very, very subtle. So I first had to learn how to pick up on the subtleness of the energy, and asked myself, is this my energy or is this coming from somewhere else? Were some of the first questions I started asking. And when I started getting a sense it wasn't mine, I started looking to see or sensing to see how was the energy different. And I noticed that when it was coming from my mind, from my ego self or my thinking self, it was usually in like a judgment tone. It would come in with like natural intuition would come through with like this just aha, like this information coming in, and it would be presented to me, and then my mind would kick in and start questioning, start doubting, start judging. And that was one of the first key things I noticed, that my mind was kind of like the judger piece of it. The intuition was just kind of naturally coming in. And then as I learned to connect in with the clear cognizance, just the clear knowing, I would just let the information flow out. I wouldn't try to pinpoint, is the person resonating to what I'm saying, or I would just let it go without questioning myself. And it usually came out as a really, really loving, higher perspective viewpoint. And so that's where those were it was a loving voice versus a judgment voice. And it was kind of like this higher perspective on the world and for the people I was working with that I knew myself did not know. So if I know myself as the person, sometimes I was doing readings for people I had never met before, and there's no way I could have known these things about them. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's that claircognizance. It's information I didn't know I had before, and all of a sudden I had it. It's from a very loving, supportive voice, and I just, let it flow through. That's kind of the biggest ways I started to be able to tell between my intuition versus my mind.
Great. And what about you, Corey?
You know what? I love this question, actually, and this topic. Because I was born telepathic. It was natural for me to hear other people's voices and have that really clear knowing of what was happening. But I went through a period of time where I would what we would call your gut instinct, where I would go into a situation and then I'd be like, I don't know. And then, when I didn't follow my intuition, I would get my butt kicked. Yeah. So, but as time went on, and I had to shut it off for a while, but, when I had my awakening, it came to me because of the voice was always me anyways. And I didn't listen to it. When I started to tune into it and actually get the training, because the training helped me a lot. The training to notice what was my voice and what was my intuition, was my body felt different. When I got the messages in my head, which is sometimes and oftentimes like a clear knowing, and I could also hear the words. It was a softer voice. And I agree with Yaila, that was great because, and it did come, it felt soft and loving. But also for me, and it still happens today, is that when I'm using my intuition and giving readings and teaching, actually, I have this calm that comes over me. So I actually feel it physically in my body as well. So it's this soft whisper, not the the shoulds, the coulds, or the woulds. Those I know often are my voice.
Yep.
That's the should, the could, or the would, or I got to do this, I got to do that, or I should have. I know that that is not my intuition. My intuition is very clear now. It always was, but in the generation that, at least, well, I know that I grew up in, we weren't taught to listen to our intuition. They say follow your gut, but when I did, it was like, oh no, that's not it, Corey, you're just being silly. So when I really started to get the tools and learn the difference between my voice and my intuition, I actually discovered that I was really hearing my intuition my whole life, as most of us do. But by refining the voice and differentiating the discernment between my voice and my intuitive voice, or I call, God or spirit's voice, when I'm being guided, that's my intuition and my higher self. It's softer and it's much more loving. And there's no question in it. I know when I get a direct knowing or a direct, voice in my head, a very loving, subtle voice in my head, no questions. That's my intuition. And so again, I'm always mentioning the training. We all are always mentioning the training, but it made a big difference. It really made it a difference, because being in the class setting or even one-to-one was that I knew that everybody else was going through the same thing, And so we were all, in that, oh, I've got that too. Oh, yeah, I've done that too. And so that's why we're here, actually. That's why we're here, ladies, right? So that's how I know whether it's my mind or my intuition. Superpower.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this really is one of the most important questions. When you start to connect with your intuition, I think the biggest question is, how do you know if it's your mind or your intuition? And I know when I started taking my training classes and started to develop my abilities, this was always the question I had for my teachers. Like, how do I know I'm not making this up? Because my lawyer brain is very suspicious. But I think that our imagination works with almost as a gateway to spirit. Because when I teach my clients to connect with their intuition, I'm teaching them through guided meditations and visualizations. So we're using the imagination as a springboard or a gateway to get people started. It's how we teach our tools, is using the imagination as that first step. So I think that the two can work together. But just like you ladies said, the way that I tell the difference between when I'm in my mind versus in my intuition is how the energy and the information feels. Just like you guys said, when I'm in my mind, I notice that the energy feels very loud and kind of sharp, and it repeats itself. So I know that if I'm hearing something kind of on a loop, that's a good clue that I'm in my mind. But there's also, just like you mentioned, Yaila, it can be tinged a lot of times with judgment and fear and ego if we're in the mind. Because the mind, of course, being our 3D operating system, it's where we hold all our limiting beliefs. And so when we're bringing information through the mind, it's going to be distorted by our limiting beliefs and all of our 3D programming. And so to me, intuition feels very different. Corey, just like you mentioned, to me, intuition feels like a whisper almost in comparison. It's so soft and it's so subtle, and it's easy to miss it if you're not quiet and present. And it never, for me, repeats itself. So if I miss it, I miss it. So the two sources of information just feel very, very different to me. And so one of the ways that I teach my clients to stay out of the mind when they're reading energy is to work out of their heart space. Because when you work out of your heart space, you're activating your 5D operating system. And all of those ego programs can't get into the heart. And so it's an easy way to keep yourself operating from the heart where the information isn't distorted by all of our doubts and our fears and our worries. So for me, it's a process of discernment, just noticing how the information feels. And everyone has to kind of feel their way through that to notice, what does my mind sound like? What does it feel like? And when am I truly getting, true intuitive information? Because you can feel the difference, I think, in the energies if you learn to listen to it. So it's just a little bit of a process. So
it definitely took some time to learn that discernment and learn to actually trust what was coming in. I think you've all experienced that too. And I love what you were saying too, Peyton, with getting your heart space and not so much the mind, because same thing. It's like when I teach my students, it's like when they're trying to learn the difference between like clairvoyance, like a picture, like a clear seeing, what are they actually getting? They almost like they'll get the flash and then they try to think about it too hard to where like now they're switching to the other side of their brain. It's more the logical side versus the intuitive, creative side. And so I just bring them back to like questions, like, oh, I think I saw a color purple. What does purple represent? You just start asking that curiosity. I think helps too, because you like the natural, like, oh, I think I saw this. Okay, cool. What does that mean? Instead of like, did I see it correct or not? It's like, I just go with it. Like whatever came through. Yeah. What does that represent? And go from there.
Yeah, because everybody's different, right? Everybody has their different way of getting their intuitive hits, so to speak. What we say is, because not everybody is the same. But, when you mentioned, Peyton, about, getting in the heart space, that was a challenge for me. I mean, I was very feeling, and brought up to not be in my heart space, to logically think through things. And even though my heart, well, I called it my intuition, I didn't even realize it was my heart really until I started this journey. Some quite a few years back, but also, in the training, right, where we teach people about like the chakras and the heart chakras and that sort of thing. And that's what really got me in touch more with my heart and how to get into my heart, because I was shut down for, most of my life. So I love that you mentioned that heart space, connecting to the heart space, right?
I think it's
like in the beginning, your heart really let you know it was there. Remember?
a time or two.
To be ignored.
Exactly. And so many people don't even know that is, that is something that can help them get out of the mind, is to get into the heart. And so it was really helpful for me, coming from a very left brain, analytical corporate background, where my mind was really going to put up a fight if I tried to trust any other source of information. And so my ego mind would argue me out of everything that I was receiving. And so for me, the only way to kind of short circuit that was to learn how to get in my heart and stay in my heart. So yeah, it helped me kind of break through and develop that discernment to notice the difference. So yeah, well,
discernment was a big one. We could do another topic on discernment too, because discernment was huge.
and
Huge. I was not brought up with discernment at all.
I think that's a lifelong process.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I mean, like, I'm still working on discernment. It's always evolving. It's always evolving depending on my next level.
True, very true.
So I think that's great, girls. Can you think of anything else on this topic that you want to share before we start to wrap up?
I think I would just stress the fact that the energy is really, really subtle at first. It's usually a flash of something. It's like a quick thought, like a quick image, a quick sense of something. It's like you both are saying, it's kind of soft, it's kind of quick, it's very, very subtle at first. It's going to feel very subtle at first because we're so used to, the world around us right now. It's like in your face right away, it's just, but it's just that very subtle, it comes in, and you just, when you're, like you mentioned, Payne, in your heart space, you're just kind of grounded. You'll start to notice those little subtleties more and more.
And you know what, too, what comes to mind, when you say that, Yaila, as well, is that also when we try so hard to listen to our intuition, the harder you try, intuition, for me, and I'm sure you ladies will agree, is it's a flow. It's an allowing, right? It's that flow. It's allowing. It comes in sometimes when you least expect it. But I remember there were times where I was just trying so hard to listen to my intuition. Nothing was happening because it was blocking all that energy off, right? Everything is energy, including our intuition.
Yeah, and effort and force will shut that valve off. It'll turn it off and kick you back into your brain. And so it's trust and surrender, to me, are the two big things. Trusting what you get and surrendering to it kind of help with that discernment process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, ladies, Yaila, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you?
I would love to have you connect with me on my Instagram page at Yaila, Yaila, super simple. And then I also have my website, yailawedel.com. And there you can find some courses I have created. I have a couple meditations. I have a grounding meditation and a heart center meditation. So a lot of fun stuff on there. I also teach classes through Intuitive Insights at myintuition.net. So you can always check back for that for upcoming workshops and classes that you can join.
Great. And how about you, Corey?
You can contact me, and I'm actually in my transition of transitioning everything to my intuitive stuff. But you can contact me on my Twitter at Corey Jean. That's JEEND. My Instagram is Corey Jean, JEEN, the Makeup Queen. And Facebook is Corey Davidson. And then you can also contact me because I also teach at Intuitive Insights at myintuition.net and see what upcoming workshops and classes that we're teaching.
Great. And you can connect with me on social media. My Instagram is at Peyton Energetics, and my website is peytonenergetics.com, where I have all of my classes, my one-on-one mentoring, and some great meditations, including a great meditation to help you shift your financial frequency. So check that out, and I hope we'll connect. So everyone, thank you for joining us tonight, and stay tuned for future videos where we will be covering more fascinating spiritual topics and all the latest news of what is going on in this ascension journey that we are all on. So we hope to see you back again, and thanks for joining us.
Bye. Thank